The 3 folders on the table each had a name on the cover: Curtis, Brett, Tyler. Diana scanned them twice to be certain. She had not missed anything. Her name was not there. She had driven 4 hours from Ottawa for this, left the print shop in Kelsey's hands, canceled 2 client calls, told Leon she'd be back Sunday. Her mother Sylvia had called 3 times in the week before, each time saying only that Walter wanted everyone together. Diana had learned not to push for details. In her family, information arrived when her father decided it was time, and not a moment sooner. The meeting was held in the living room of the house where Diana had grown up, a split level on 5 acres outside Kemptville, south of Ottawa. Walter and Sylvia sat at the head of the table. Her brothers were already seated. Curtis, the oldest at 44, who managed the family's equipment rental business out of the lower level of the property. Brett, 41, who operated a small mechanical workshop on the adjoining lot. And Tyler, 36, the youngest son, who had recently launched an excavation and landscaping operation. Their wives sat along the far wall. A neighbor named Avery, who had assisted with the paperwork, sat near the window with his briefcase open across his knees. Diana pulled out a chair and sat down. Walter cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have decided to settle the property while we're still healthy enough to make the decisions ourselves. That way, there's no arguing about it later." Avery set 3 folders on the table, one in front of Curtis, one in front of Brett, one in front of Tyler. Walter walked through each one. Curtis would receive the main house and the 5-acre lot it sat on, along with the equipment rental business registered to the property, with the understanding that he would maintain the buildings and keep the space available for family gatherings. Brett would take the adjoining workshop lot, assessed separately. Tyler would receive the 2-acre parcel at the rear of the property, the one that fronted a county road recently reclassified for light commercial use. That parcel had appreciated considerably in the past 2 years, and everyone in the room knew it. Diana listened without interrupting. When Walter finished, she asked, "What about my share, Dad?" No one looked at her right away. Walter said, "You're settled in Ottawa. You and Leon have the house. You have your shop. You've done well. The property here needs to stay with the people who are going to manage it." Sylvia looked down at her hands. "You have your own life built, sweetheart. Taking something here would only complicate things for you." Diana looked at the 3 folders. She had known, in the part of her that had been paying careful attention for 36 years, that this was how the afternoon would go. Knowing it in advance did not make it land any differently. "So I'm here to sign something," she said. Avery slid a single sheet across the table. It stated that Diana had been informed of the property transfers, that she understood the division was her parents' voluntary decision, and that she would not challenge it. Her name appeared nowhere else in the paperwork. She read it through, then she picked up the pen. Walter stopped her. "Before you sign," he said, "there's something else." Diana set the pen down. "Your mother and I have been talking about what comes next. Sylvia's knees have been troubling her and my blood pressure has been up. We think it would be better for us to be somewhere closer to medical care. The Civic Hospital is right there in Ottawa, and your schedule at the shop gives you more flexibility than your brother's." He paused. "We'd like to move in with you and Leon." Diana was certain she had misheard him. "You're planning to move to Ottawa," she said. "It makes sense," Walter said, "and a mother is always more comfortable with her daughter." She looked at Curtis. He spread his hands. "The rental office runs out of the lower level. Equipment moving through all week. It's not the right environment for 2 older people long term." She looked at Brett. Brett said Rachel's mother visited for months at a stretch, and the house was already stretched thin. Tyler said he was still building out the operation and living in a 1-bedroom above a garage in Brockville. "Give me a year to get stable," he said. "Once things settle, we'll revisit it." Sylvia reached across and touched Diana's arm. "You've always known how to make things work, sweetheart. That's all." Diana did not pull her arm away. She looked at the 3 folders with their 3 names, and then she looked at the document still waiting for her signature. "When you said I had no share in this property," she said, keeping her voice level, "you told me it was because I'm married and living in Ottawa, that I have my own situation. But now that you need somewhere to go, I'm the right choice because I'm the daughter. Is that what I'm hearing?" Walter said, "You don't need to turn this into something it isn't." "I'm not turning it into anything. I'm repeating back exactly what I just heard." Curtis said, "Diana, you're in the best position out of all of us. It simply makes sense." How much would each of you contribute each month toward their expenses if mom and dad lived with me? No one answered. If dad needed to get to emergency, in the middle of the night, which of you would come? Still nothing. Diana picked up the pen and signed the acknowledgement form in full. Then she capped the pen and placed it on the table. I'm not saying no to helping mom and dad, she said. I'm saying I will not take on all 3 of your shares by myself. If we're talking about this seriously, then all 4 of us need to talk clearly about what each person is actually going to do. Walter's jaw tightened. We're your parents. We raised all 4 of you. This isn't a business arrangement. I know that. But right now everything on this table was measured and written down. Everything you're asking of me is supposed to run on good faith and family feeling. Curtis's wife said Diana was being dramatic. Brett's wife looked at the window. Diana stood, picked up her bag, and said she'd call in the week. She drove back to Ottawa that afternoon and did not stop once. She had not come from nothing, and her family had never quite accounted for that. Diana had started her print and design studio out of the 2nd bedroom of the apartment she and Leon rented when they first arrived in Ottawa. She was 28. She had studied graphic design at Algonquin, worked 3 years at a firm downtown, and left when she realized she was producing twice the output of anyone at the same level and receiving none of the recognition. She took 2 client accounts, told Leon what she was doing, and set up a freelance operation on a folding table pushed against a window that looked onto a parking structure. 11 years later, the studio occupied a storefront on Bank Street with 4 full-time staff and a client list that included school boards, regional municipalities, and several national nonprofits. The apartment was gone. She and Leon had a mortgage on a semi in Gloucester, 2 kids in school, and a business that had survived a pandemic, a landlord dispute, and a year when Diana had worked through a pregnancy complication without taking a single full week off. Her family had called her twice in that period. Once when Curtis needed a short-term loan to cover an insurance gap on the equipment business. Once when Tyler needed a cosigner on a line of credit for his excavation startup, and his own credit history wasn't sufficient. Diana had handled both without making a production of it. She had never asked for anything back. She thought about that in the days after the Kemptville meeting. Not with bitterness exactly. More with the kind of clear-eyed recognition that settles in when you have finally stopped being surprised. Leon listened to all of it on Sunday evening. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want my brothers to stop pretending this is about what's best for mom and dad." He nodded. Did not tell her she was overreacting. He had been married to her long enough to know the difference between her being unreasonable and her being right. It was 3 weeks before the situation resolved itself, and not the way anyone intended. Sylvia called Diana on a Tuesday in early November. Her voice was careful in the way it got when she was working around, something she didn't want to say directly. She said she and Walter had decided to stay in Kemptville for the time being. Curtis had said there was no rush. Diana said that sounded reasonable. Sylvia said she'd call soon. She didn't call for 2 weeks. The call Diana received instead was from Brett. He said Curtis had started the renovation on the lower level, and the noise during the day was difficult. Walter and Sylvia had been asked to move into the back bedroom while the work went on. The back bedroom faced the storage lot. When the wind shifted, it caught fumes from the equipment. "Is the room actually livable?" Diana asked. Brett paused. "It's not great." Diana called Sylvia that evening. Her mother said she was fine. Diana asked whether the cough she could hear at the edge of Sylvia's voice was new. Sylvia said it was probably just the dust. By the end of that week, Walter had called a car and taken himself and Sylvia to Brett's house with 2 bags of clothes. Diana found out from her Aunt June, who had heard it from a neighbor. She called Brett. He confirmed it and sounded tired. Having 2 older people in the spare room while Rachel was managing the household, and the kids and her own mother's visits part of the year was, he said, a lot to manage. Diana ordered a 2-week refill of Sylvia's blood pressure medication and had it delivered to Brett's address. She sent a note asking Rachel to track the doses. Rachel texted back a single thank you. Sylvia lasted 6 weeks at Brett's. Diana heard the details later from Tyler, who heard them from Rachel, who had finally said, not unkindly but plainly, that she could not continue cooking a separate meal for Sylvia at every dinner while managing everything else. She had 3 kids. She hadn't agreed to this, it was too much. Tyler drove up from Brockville and took their parents to his new place, a 2-bedroom unit in a low-rise just outside of town. It was adequate, but Tyler left for job sites before 6 most mornings and was rarely home before evening. Diana drove down on a Saturday in January. She brought groceries, a non-slip bath mat, and a refill of Walter's tablets. She found Sylvia sitting at the kitchen table in her coat because Tyler kept the heat low to manage costs, and Walter in the living room with the television loud because his good hearing aids had been left behind at Curtis's during the move. She stayed 4 hours. Before she left, she said quietly to Tyler that their parents needed more warmth in the apartment and someone present in the evenings. Tyler said, "I'm doing the best I can." She believed him. That was part of the problem. He was doing his best, and his best had been built for a single man's life, not for two aging parents who needed consistent daily care. That night, after the kids were in bed, she and Leon sat at the kitchen table. "They can't keep going from house to house," Diana said. "No," Leon said. "But if I start arranging things, my brothers will treat that as me taking it on." Leon poured them both a cup of tea and sat down, "Then make it so they can't." She opened her laptop and started writing. She called the meeting herself. She texted each of her brothers and their wives and asked them to be at Tyler's on the following Saturday at 10 in the morning. She framed it as a statement, not a request. Curtis arrived 12 minutes late and checked his phone twice before sitting down. Diana had a printed sheet at each chair. She let everyone settle before she started. "Mom's family doctor says her blood pressure is inconsistent, and she needs her medication monitored daily. Dad is managing, but he had his own knee replacement 18 months ago, and he's 71. They cannot keep living like this, cycling through houses every few weeks, depending on whoever is least inconvenienced that month." She slid the sheets toward the middle of the table. "I found a one-bedroom apartment near the Community Health Center on King Street in Brockville. It's accessible. The bathroom has room for grab bars, and the building has an elevator. I've spoken with a personal support worker named Carrie who does daytime hours and has experience with seniors with mobility limitations. Her fee goes directly to her, not through me, not through anyone else in this room." Tyler looked up. "You already found a place?" "I put a hold on it yesterday. It needs to be confirmed by end of day today." Curtis leaned back. "So you've gone and arranged everything without asking anyone?" "I've arranged an option. What I haven't done is take on anyone else's portion. The cost divides 4 ways. Whoever doesn't pay their share takes care days instead. Those days are scheduled in advance, not volunteered whenever it's convenient." Brett looked at his sheet. "What counts as a care day?" "Saturdays or weekday evenings, driving mom and dad to appointments. Being there if something happens, it rotates. If you need to change your day, you arrange a swap in advance and post it in the group chat. You don't simply not show up." Curtis's wife said this sounded like treating parents like an HR problem. Diana looked at her. "The last 2 months have been a shift schedule. The difference is that right now, whoever is the most tired just passes them to the next person. I want it to be clear before that happens again." It took 2 hours. There were long silences. Twice, Curtis pushed his chair back as though preparing to leave, and both times Walter looked at him from across the table and he sat back down. By noon, all 4 siblings had initialed the page. Payment amounts were recorded. Carrie's direct deposit information was listed. Rent went to the landlord, not through Diana. She photographed every page and sent it to the family group chat while everyone was still sitting there. Underneath, she wrote, "If your availability changes, post the update at least a week ahead and confirm who's covering your slot." Curtis pocketed his phone without responding. Tyler read the message and nodded at nothing in particular. Walter and Sylvia moved into the Brockville apartment in February. Carrie began the following Monday. The first 2 weeks were difficult in the ordinary way that new arrangements are: wrong-sized furniture, a dripping bathroom tap, Sylvia refusing the hands exercises, until Carrie found a way to make them feel less like rehabilitation and more like something a person simply chose to do. Over the months that followed, the schedule held imperfectly. Tyler was the most consistent. He lived closest, and Diana suspected some of it was the unspoken weight of the thermostat. Brett showed up on time but left early. Curtis was late more often than not, and twice sent his wife to cover his slot without posting it in the group. Diana recorded everything in the chat: date, time, who was present. If a slot went uncovered, she noted it. If someone covered extra, she noted that too. Curtis told her she was making the family look bad. She told him the record existed so that no one had to rely on memory later. He didn't respond. In March, Sylvia fell. She reached for something on the kitchen counter on a Sunday evening lost her footing on the tile, and went down hard. Carrie was gone for the day. Tyler had texted that morning to say he was stuck on a site and would be late to his slot. Walter found Sylvia on the floor and called 911. Diana was on the 416 within 40 minutes of Walter's call. When she arrived at Brockville General, Tyler was already there, still in his work boots. He looked shaken in the way that a person does when they understand they almost missed something that mattered. Curtis arrived an hour later. Brett came the following morning. Sylvia's wrist was fractured and her hip was bruised. She was kept overnight. When the attending physician came to speak with the family, Diana was the one with a notepad. She asked about the discharge plan, about physiotherapy, about modifications to the apartment. She wrote everything down and photographed her notes. When the doctor left, Curtis said, "So what's the plan now?" Diana looked at her oldest brother. "The plan is what we already agreed to, plus additional evening support for 6 weeks while Mom's wrist heals. We add those hours to the rotation." She sent the revised schedule to the group chat from Sylvia's hospital room that night. She had already texted Carrie about extended hours. She had already called the physiotherapy clinic attached to the community health center. Tyler came to stand beside her while she was typing. He said, "I knew I was going to be late and I should have called someone earlier." Diana looked up from her phone. "I know," she said. He nodded. He didn't say more, and she didn't ask him to. She could see that the explanation would just be more of what she already understood. The job, the timing, the ordinary difficulty of managing a life while trying to do right by people who needed more than a busy person could easily give. She understood all of that. She just needed him to show up on time more than she needed him to understand exactly why he hadn't. "Can you do Wednesday evenings going forward?" she said. He took the pen from her hand and signed his name on the Wednesday line. It was Sylvia who surprised her, 2 months later. Diana was visiting on a Tuesday afternoon in May. Carrie had gone for the day. Walter was at the pharmacy. Sylvia was sitting up in bed with a book open on her lap, her wrist in a soft brace. She seemed more settled than she had in months, less worn down, more like herself. She pointed at the bedside cabinet. "Bottom drawer, there's an envelope." Diana found it, manila unsealed. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, a printout, and a small newspaper clipping. The printout was a page from a national design competition website. Diana's studio had placed third in the small business category 2 years earlier. At the top of the page, someone had typed "Our Diana" in a shaky font. It had been printed at the library, she guessed. Her parents had never owned a printer. The newspaper clipping was from the Kemptville Advance, a short article about local businesses donating services to a community fundraiser. Diana's studio had contributed custom signage. Her name appeared in the third paragraph. Someone had drawn a small asterisk next to it in ballpoint. The last item in the envelope was a birthday card Diana had sent 6 years ago. She had written a long note inside, because it had been a difficult year, and for some reason that was the moment she had decided to be honest about it. She had written about what the studio meant to her and why she needed to keep building it, even when it was exhausting. She had not expected her mother to keep it. "Mom," she said. Sylvia said, "I didn't always say the things I should have. Your father had strong opinions about how things were meant to go, and I had mine, but I kept mine quiet. That wasn't fair to you." Diana sat on the edge of the bed. "I know you didn't have an easy start," Sylvia continued. "Building things by yourself. I know we didn't make it easier." She looked down at her hands in her lap, the brace making her arm look smaller than Diana remembered. "I was proud of you the whole time. I just didn't say it." Diana held the envelope. "I know," she said, because some part of her had always needed to believe it, had carried that uncertainty for years like a question she'd never found the right moment to ask. Hearing it said plainly loosened something in her chest, just slightly. "It would have helped to hear it then," she said. Sylvia nodded once. Yes, it would have. Neither of them said anything for a while. Outside, a car moved slowly down the street. Carrie had left soup on the stove, and the smell of it drifted through from the kitchen. Diana put everything back in the envelope and set it on the cabinet. "Keep this somewhere he won't find it," she said. Sylvia made a small sound that was almost a laugh. "He doesn't touch my things." Diana drove back to Ottawa that evening. She didn't tell Leon about the envelope right away. She turned it over in her mind for most of the highway home. The way you hold something that matters before you're ready to let it be part of a conversation. Karma, Diana had observed, does not always announce itself. In June, Curtis called to say his son was taking over the front operations of the equipment rental business. It made sense, he said. The kid was 23, already working in it, knew the accounts. Curtis would step back, handle the books and the licensing from home. In August, Curtis called again. His voice was flatter this time. His son had decided to restructure the lower level. The rental office space was being converted into a showroom. Curtis and his wife were being asked to move their living area to the two smaller rooms at the back of the upper floor, which looked out over the storage lot. Diana listened without saying anything. Curtis said, "The business is technically in his name now, so he has the say over how the space is used." She remembered a back bedroom with a window that faced a storage lot, and diesel fumes when the wind shifted, and 2 bags of clothes that had been packed in a hurry. "That must be difficult," she said. "Yeah," he said. He didn't ask for her advice, and she didn't offer any. She asked if he was coming down for his next Saturday with their parents. He said he would be there. He arrived 20 minutes early. 6 months after Sylvia and Walter moved into the Brockville apartment, the care schedule on the wall had been revised 4 times. Not everyone managed every commitment, but no one had disappeared. No one could. The record was there, in the group chat, for all of them to see. Walter changed in the way that people do when circumstances stop offering them another option. He learned Sylvia's medication schedule by heart. He started asking the doctor questions himself, instead of looking at Diana and waiting for her to handle it. He stopped handing her the binder of paperwork and saying to take care of it, and started keeping it on his side of the nightstand instead. One evening, Diana arrived to find him sitting with Sylvia doing her hand exercises, counting the repetitions the way Carrie had shown him, slow and careful. He did not look like a man who thought the work was beneath him. He never apologized to Diana directly, and she did not wait for it. What she received instead was something quieter and more durable, the recognition finally that her house in Ottawa was hers, that her schedule had limits the same as everyone else's, that her capacity was not a resource the family could tap whenever the other 3 options ran dry. It was not everything, but it was real, and she knew the difference. In September, Diana's older daughter came home from school with a poster she'd made for an art assignment, a typographic layout with illustrated figures arranged around her own name in block letters at the bottom. The teacher had written outstanding compositional instinct in the margin in red pen. Leon put it on the fridge the same evening. Diana straightened it twice without thinking about it. The following week, when she drove to Brockville, she brought it along and set it on the table while she made tea. Walter picked it up. He looked at it for a long time. "She has a good eye," he said. "She does." He set it down and looked at Diana across the table. She should keep doing it. It was such a plain thing to say. Diana thought about the years when it would have cost her something to hear it. The years she had wondered, without asking, whether the work she was doing was visible to the people who were meant to see it. She thought about the asterisk in a newspaper clipping, and the words are Diana typed at the top of a printout at a public library. "She will," Diana said. Walter nodded. He poured his tea and sat down. The poster went back to the fridge in Ottawa. A few days later, Diana had it framed, plain wood, clear glass, and hung it where the morning light came through on the way to the kitchen. Her daughter saw it and went quiet for a moment, then moved on to her cereal like it was the most natural thing in the world. Diana stood in the doorway for a moment before following her in. She had built the studio out of a folding table and 2 client accounts and years of early mornings and late nights. She had done it without a share of anything that once carried her family's name. She had helped her parents without swallowing her brother's portions of the responsibility. She had made schedules and kept records and driven highway kilometers in February sleet, and she had done all of it without calling it sacrifice, because sacrifice implies the existence of a choice she had never actually been offered. The real difference in the end was not what she had done. It was what she had refused to carry alone. Her daughter called from the kitchen. Breakfast was getting cold. Diana turned off the hall light and went in.